All right. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October meeting of the Old Zoning Commission. Today being, got my dates mixed up, the 15th? 14th of October, 2025. At the table this evening, we have alternate Michael Fogliano, permanent member Mary Jo Nozel, and permanent member Denise Savageau. On this side of the table, we have Michael Peter Barnes and Madam Secretary Jane Marsh. Also, Eric Knapp, our land use coordinator, myself, Paul Orzel, absent this evening, our permanent member Michael Miller, and alternate Mary Gardner Coppola. And Mr. Barnes is right here, yes. He's incognito.
Hello, beautiful.
Okay, so our first order of business is a public hearing for 40. Oh, right, thank you. Two things, actually. This evening, Michael Miller is not in attendance, will not be in attendance. So sitting in for him as permanent member this evening is Mr. Fogliano. And secondly, I will take a motion that in the regular meeting section of the agenda, item 3, new business and formal discussion of 125 Shore Road, that we make that old business item number A.1 before B. I have a motion, please. Motion by Jane Marsh. Is there a second? Second by Mary Jo. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, all right. No one is opposed, I'm assuming, and no one abstains. Okay, so, public hearing, 40 McCurdy Road. Madam Secretary.
All right. I'm reading the legal notice. The Zoning Commission of the Town of Old Lyme will hold a public hearing at a regular meeting on Tuesday, October 14th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. Old Lyme, Connecticut, to consider and hear comments on the following. Case 25-3, 40 McCurdy Road, special permit application to modify original application, Old Lyme Country Club applicant. At this hearing, interested parties may be heard and written communications received. Copies of these applications are in the Land Use Office, 52 Lime Street, Old Lyme, Connecticut. This is dated today. Dated the 30th day of September, Jane Marsh, Secretary.
Thank you.
Yep, and we have some exhibits. A is the application. Exhibit B are the plans. Exhibit C, email from Mark Glazer. Matt Glazer. Yeah. Dated 8/27/25. Exhibit B is Richard M. Hosley resume. Exhibit E is the legal advertisement, and Exhibit F is the certificate of decision granted by Old Lyme Zoning Commission, recorded 6/13/25. All right, that's everything.
That's everything. Okay, I then will ask the applicants to come forward and present us.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Matt Glazer with Newfield Construction. Speaking on behalf of the Old Lyme Country Club, we put in the modification to the Town of Old Lyme Zoning Commission to allow blasting on the property. We reached out to Rick Hosley to put together a presentation for everybody here to show the benefits of blasting on a project of this nature. In terms of the time constraint, it's quicker to blast as opposed to hole ramming. We were concerned with the time that it takes to actually hole ram and the disturbance it causes to neighbors because it's a constant distraction throughout the day. It can go on for weeks, and we are aware of the situation that has been going on at Mile Creek or happened at Mile Creek School with the hole ramming, so we're trying to avoid that situation with the town. I myself am a town of Old Lyme resident, so I live here in town as well. But I want to turn it over to Rick Hosley to present on blasting.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight. Rock excavation is my passion. Our company is 102 years old. It is R.M. Hosley Explosives Implementation and Engineering and Realty Securities Consulting. I had an opportunity to head up to the golf course and really get a chance to look around. I enjoyed it. A little bit about me. I've worked all over the world. I am the technical director for the European Federation of Explosives Engineers and past vice president for the International Society of Explosive Engineers. What I enjoy about this photo is the presentation of how much rock is on site. It is just incredible. They say that when Connecticut was clear-cut, the best geologic maps were drawn because you could see all the rock outcroppings and draw connections between various types of rock throughout the state of Connecticut. And that's present here. I indicated on this map just where the rock locations are, which is indicated on the blueprints where there's going to be an addition to the main clubhouse, some blasting for a parking area, and some rock removal, I should say, adjacent to the Johnny Cake Hill Road. Right. Snack shack, so to speak. I wanted to talk about some considerations that the industry takes in mind when blasting is discussed on a site. And the first I want to discuss is the geologic setting and structure. Again, looking at the site, you can see there's very little topsoil. That's a result of the Laurinite ice flow that took place with the Wisconsin glaciation about 20,000 years ago and scraped off all of our topsoil and gravel and gave us Long Island, Martha's Vineyard, Block Island, and all those beautiful places. What's interesting about the rock on this site is the structure. And from an explosives engineering perspective, we're always looking at like grain direction and cleavage and the way rock lays, so to speak, or the way it's bedded. This is a metamorphic rock. You can see under high heat and pressure, or you can imagine under high heat and pressure, the variations in this. What was granite is now a granitic gneiss. The brown, shallow bedrock, no topsoil to hold the water in place. So this is a metamorphic bedrock. It's interlayered with schist and gneiss. It's well foliated. It's called the Plainfield Formation and the Potter Hill Granite Gneiss Formation. Why is this important? Well, this sort of starts the focus to the explosives engineer as to how the rock is going to break, essentially. Again, some more photos. This photo you can't really see, but there's some quartzite here, nodules of quartzite. Just briefly, two major occurrences in rock. There's extrusive rock that's extruded on the surface, and there's intrusive rock. Intrusive rock cools very slowly, and when it does, minerals separate. And rock like this, an intrusive rock, is very easy to break because you can see the pre-existing structure. It's already starting to fall apart. This is an example of a project that took place in Guilford, Old Road in Guilford. Blasting occurred here 3 feet off this telephone pole. But what's interesting about it is the structure. Soft layer, hard layer, very difficult, very tenacious because as you'll learn later on, to overcome this kind of structure, you have to contain the explosives energy within the rock mass and not outside the rock mass. This is some neat structure on Johnny Cake. You can imagine cutting this rock like as if for dimensional stone steps, curbing, using these planar joints that run at an acute angle to Johnny Cake Road. Next series of photos that I want to think about the proximity to structures and the conditions of those structures. We have a well on site that is actually between the main clubhouse where the addition has a need for rock removal. And this building here, which is racquetball, right? Some kind of storage building anyway, has a post right on ledge. And there's a request to remove this rock for a parking area. very close proximity. Another look from the cemetery, if you're familiar with the area, back to the clubhouse, just to get a perspective, and there's that well, and then the well from another photo. The ancient Old Lyme Town Hall is on the site, and I wasn't familiar with it until I had a chance to go up and take a look. Unfortunately, it's tough to see much with the invasive species that have covered the foundation, but that is certainly in close proximity. So why blasting? Why have they come to us and said blasting? Well, blasting is really cost effective, believe it or not. Rock is typically very tenacious, and to remove it mechanically by chipping it or splitting it takes a really long time. And again, blasting is just a fraction of the time. What's involved? Blasting is designed to remove rock only where the rock is. And there are very strict vibration limits and planning that goes with rock blasting. Basically what's involved is we drill a pattern of cylindrical holes, cylinders in the rock, if you will, load it with explosives, and then crush stone. Crushed stone helps to maintain the energy within the rock mass. Otherwise, it would be like a cannon, and it would blow out and it would be loud. A little bird's eye view. Essentially what we're doing is we're using a chemical to create a rapid expansion of gases in a confined area. And how we manage that confined area affects not only the radial cracking and the gas production when that explosive detonates, but also the movement toward the point of relief or the free face when you use explosives. Here's another example of kind of a point of relief. Slicing bread off of a loaf. You know that the point of relief is away from the original rock mass. So this is how we kind of think about a blast design and what the results will be. If there's a distant point of relief and the explosive's energy can't overcome it, it generates a lot of vibration. But if the explosives can overcome that point of relief by pushing the rock mass away, there's very little vibration. There's also, when you have very little vibration and you move that, you also move the air, and there could be more noise. So there's sort of a serene balance between air blast and vibration. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And I want to cite some examples. This is a project in Mulberry Point, and each one of these piles of dust represents a cylinder drilled in rock. These crazy looking potholders are blasting mats, and they're made from elevator cable out of New York City, FYI. Why so many? Well, this is microblasting. There's lots of super small charges that are detonated with intervals thousands of seconds apart. And it's sort of like the same philosophy of knocking over dominoes. You get the first one to fall over and all the other ones follow. And with that, you create a frequency of vibration that is less perceptible. Kind of think of the idea of throwing a big rock in a pool of water. You get a big kersploosh and a rolling wave that comes out. Well, we don't like to do that in the explosives industry because that offends people, because your boat will go up and then it'll come down. It'll go up and then it'll come down. But if I throw a handful of crushed stone in that water, we got a little choppy waves and the boat is not disturbed at all. So that's sort of our target when we talk about detonating microcharges and microblasting with multiple time intervals. This project, they're blasting for a house foundation right on the ocean. And what's critical with this is there's a retaining wall here that is a non-mortared stone retaining wall. So the idea is to break the rock and move it upward, but not push the retaining wall over. So the point of relief or the heave is upward and not toward the ocean. So this is post-blast. That's the heave of the rock where the foundation is going to be dug out. And this is the retaining wall that was not disturbed during the blasting project. So the big question is, can blasting be conducted without damage occurring to an adjacent structure? And I just want to cite some examples, and these are kind of fun. They're projects I've worked on over the last couple of years. This is an addition for a pool and a pool house in Greenwich next to the Millbrook Country Club. I was there this morning working on this project and a project just like it for the country club there. So what they're doing is drilling and blasting the rock adjacent to this house so they can essentially walk out the door into their covered pool room. Again, the cable mats, excavator to sit the mats. What's interesting about microblasting in this project is your focus primarily is not to disturb or heave the cement foundation that's underneath this structure. Yes, you're monitoring sound and vibration outside of this area, but really this is the focus because you are working within inches, feet of a structure here. This is another view, just kind of looking down at it. This was an interesting project in Stony Creek, Connecticut. Similar kind of thing, only this was for a house foundation. There's houses on both sides. And this cut, this depth is 12 feet. So they're taking out 12 feet of rock to put in a foundation in between two houses. And you'll see a little better. Again, the blasting mats help to retain the rock mass as it moves forward. Slicing the rock off like you would a piece of bread off of a loaf. Little better understanding. Again, this is what they call a loading pole and 11-foot hole. This is a brick house with stucco on it. These folks are both attorneys out of New York City, and they this is their summer home. So we became friends with them right away. As you can see, you could probably fit 3 or 4 5-gallon pails between the blast cut and their house. That's how close we are. By the way, these poles are to retain curtains, if you will, to keep the dust off of the house during the blasting or drilling operation. Another view of it. This house on the other side of the cut had a stone foundation and there was no mortar in the foundation. It was just a hand-laid stone foundation. So that was also a very sensitive structure. Again, some more photos just to kind of get a feel for how close it is. And then this is an example of kind of what occurs during the blast. That's a blast. That's a microblast. That's what we have to do to break the rock and preserve the structures on both sides and maintain the U.S. Bureau of Mines and the Office of Surface Mines legal limits for ground vibration. I'm wearing the flowered shirt. President of the Society of Explosive Engineers is with me, and we're examining what we call line drilling. So before we did any of that blasting, we came into this site, we drilled holes on 6-inch centers right next to each other and essentially perforated the rock like you'd perforate paper in a notebook that you would tear out. So when that rock is blasted, it tears, you stand off these pre-existing line drill holes and it tears the rock out without causing damage or allowing that gas energy that we talked about to penetrate the pre-existing rocks outside of the excavation area. Another view of the house and a better perspective of that. This is looking from the ocean in, and you can see how tight this area is. What was really tough for the contractor was they actually had to build it from the ocean out. So the septic system had to be built first. I think this is the septic tank, and then onward. There's also some geothermal wells, I think, drilled inside the foundation area. This is a house foundation on Bashan Lake in Haddam. What's interesting about this is this mast. This is a rock drill, and that's what drills those cylindrical holes that we talked about. This is 20 feet in height. So I'm standing up almost level with the top of this mass. There's a 20-foot of rock that has to be removed without putting any rock into the lake. Very sensitive. This was a project I was on a couple days ago. This is a club, a sportsman's club in Colebrook, Connecticut. Right under the blasting mat is the location for a pump chamber for a septic system. So the affluent would come out of the lower level of the floor, go into a pump tank, and then be pumped up to the septic system, pump chamber. Again, super close, microblasting so as not to affect the structure. What's really critical here is that you get the rock to overcome the relief of the ground and not move toward the building. Subbase and grot, and this was a few years back. This was probably about 12 years ago. They call this the bowling alley, and on this project, the bowling alley is full of computers. And I didn't get a chance to go inside because that was classified. But essentially, we're blasting a rock access, and in fact, a company from Old Lyme did the excavating. Macnic Construction. They did the excavating once the rock was blasted here. And again, within feet of the existing building. I think they put in a loading dock and some secret utilities in that roadway. Another project in Short Beach, Connecticut, same kind of thing. Super close to a structure. This is an older structure. Tight quarters. Rock drill that we pointed out before that drills those cylindrical holes. And it can drill holes from 1.5 inches in diameter up to 8 inches in diameter. And that regulates how much explosives you put in that cylinder based on its diameter and length. Another view of that. Again, you can see that line drilling technique that we talked about earlier. What's important about that line drilling is not only that it tears the rock off at that location, but it also changes the density of the rock. Ground vibration is reflected by density change. So if you have an airspace, or if you go from rock to soil, or if the rock has cracks or lineations in it, the ground vibration will actually refract or reflect off those changes in density. So the line drilling does two things. One, it helps to cleave the rock in a certain location, but it also helps to reflect the ground vibration and preserve the sanctity of the vintage foundation. Across the street was a stucco house. Not an attorney this time, but I think a doctor. But this, the facade was very tender, something that if you kind of bumped your elbow into it, we'd leave a dent. So it's sort of a foam stucco facade. So very sensitive. There was also a high pressure sewer system here, pump chamber for the city, town of Brantford. So the fluids would flow down a pipe, go into this chamber, and then be pumped back. And they're very concerned about obviously damaging that pipe. Again, this is another video of some microblasting. A little more aggressive, but again, that point of relief, you're overcoming the rock mass and not generating ground vibration. Less ground vibration. Ken Everts in Madison has Clydesdale horses. And this is his horse barn, and the horses were on site. This is right up against the barn. Same kind of thing. You hardly see any movement. Swimming pool in Old Lyme, overlooking the river. This is really exciting because you get to see the timing of the microcharges if you look at this one at a time. Think of each one of these as a row of dominoes. And if you look at it, you can really see the flow. You see how that's kind of a wave? So one charge makes relief for the second charge, which makes relief for the third. And if you focus on the structure itself, you see that it does not move. The camera moves. No blasting mats here because there's 3 or 4 feet of earth, and that earth acts like a blasting mat, the soil itself, and helps to contain the energy of the explosives. Possum Park, this fella invented Lipitor, I think. Yeah, that's what he did. This was for a vineyard. We're blasting rocks so we can plant a vineyard. There's another view of it. Different blast, but same location. Addition in line. This was a few years back. I can't think of what road. Right up against the house. And they were putting an addition. And typically it's a 9-foot cut with 8-foot wall, 10-foot cut, 8-foot walls, 1-foot footing, and then some crushed stone underneath it. So we're down probably 9 or 10 feet there on that one. So again, we'll blasting for the proposed application fracture the rock outside of the construction area, not if we follow a blast plan and we use microblasting. Another example of this is Holyoke basalt. This rock has very complicated structure. It is basically extrusive rock, volcanic rock. And this rock, as you've seen throughout the state of Connecticut, if you've driven up and down I-91, and looked at the Metacomb Ridge, this rock was extruded on the surface, cooled really quickly, and because it did, it's full of these little microfractures, the same way glass would microfracture. If you got it hot and then put it under cold water, it would shrink really quickly and shatter, or vice versa. If you had it really cold and you put it hot, made it hot, it would expand really quickly and shatter. Again, the half rounds or the bore holes that remain, and these were not line drill holes, but these holes actually had explosives in them. One of the ways that we protect a slope or a rock mass like this is to use a smaller diameter explosive in the cylinder than the cylinder itself. And then when the explosive detonates or expands to make a rapid expansion of gases, it has to fill that airspace before it pushes the rock. That lowers the detonation velocity of the explosive. So there's little tricks of the trade that we can do and use. This is Route 2 in Norwich, and what I like about this cut, there was line drilling to protect not only the slope but the church, is the fact that this rock is not native to this rock. So this was brought in from some other locations, 2 different kinds of rock, which I think is kind of interesting. But this is a great cut, really beautiful. Again, a metamorphic granitic gneiss. People call it granite, but it was probably a granite that's been under pressure and formed. Our next list of considerations, public relations and pre-blast surveys. So the proximity, as we've discussed, is really critical. And the fact that the explosives energy is designed to be consumed in the fracturing process actually makes this destructive interference of vibration. Again, that philosophy of throwing crushed stone in a pool of water versus a big rock. You don't want to throw a big rock in a pool of water if you want to keep the sailboat flowing and not bobbing up and down. Vibration. So vibration is something that's super important in terms of monitoring. We have to monitor every time you use explosives to determine how those vibrations affect whatever structure might be nearby. The weakest structure is horsehair plaster, and that's found in some of the older homes in New England. And that's what the vibration limits were based on, horsehair plaster. We're going to provide the Old Lyme Country Club and their construction crew and general contractor blast planning guidelines, things to consider and look into before they move forward with any kind of blasting. And we can go into this detail, but I'm not sure it's really necessary. But essentially, signage, pre-blast surveys, identifying underground utilities. Perimeter control is critical in terms of wetlands, septic systems, wells, or the foundation that you're blasting next to. And what's unique about this project is they're their closest neighbor, because they're blasting to create a foundation for the addition of their building, but they want to retain most of the building. So that's kind of the fine line. A public relations notification letter kind of explains what blasting is, should be distributed to the neighbors so they know what's going on outside of the area that you might do a pre-blast survey. So this may cover people that live within 500 feet of any blasting area. And this is really nice because at the end there's a couple of phone numbers, a website, and an email address. So if you have concerns, you can call and say, hey, what's going on out there? How come you haven't told me about this? Or it really upsets my dog because you blow a warning whistle before you blast. Can you call me and I'll make sure the dog's inside? Sure. So we create a call list that goes along with this notification process. Again, our map, some of the closest structures for the main lodge, about 300 feet or so, to, I think this is number 25, Johnny Cake, 165 feet to the cemetery, stone wall. Parking area, that is very close, 72 feet to the foundation of the old, plus or minus, old town hall foundation. So that's important to note. Possibly over 400 feet to number 20, Johnny Cake. And then a third structure, number 16, again, over 400 feet. Really important to know because you want to know how these structures are going to be affected. And the blast design takes into account distances. Remember, the distance is probably going to be 3 or 4 feet from the structures that you're working next to. So that's how the microblasting will be designed. Pre-construction survey of the wall is really necessary. I think the cemetery as well, so I'm going to recommend that to our clients, as well as the houses adjacent that I pointed out. Another look at the cemetery and some of the adjacent structures. The swimming pool should be documented. In other words, they come in and take a photograph and document any inconsistencies. They may also come back and say, well, this pool house was made with horsehair plaster. That's a very sensitive construction material. You want to pay attention to that. Monitoring. So how is vibration monitored? It's monitored by an independent third party. Not the country club, not the construction company, not the blasting company, by a company that does this and is approved by the insurance company. And they set up seismographs, little computer, has a microphone, and then inside this case there's a geophone that measures ground vibration in different dimensions. First and foremost, a test blast. Once all of these considerations are met, and there's approval processes through permitting, through the state and the federal government, and obviously locally through the fire marshal's office. A test blast is really critical. That's where they just detonate a very small amount of explosives and then measure how that affects. That test blast is done furthest from whatever structure you're trying to protect. We collect that data. We review the particle velocity and frequency. That's how you measure vibration. Essentially a particle that's spinning in a circle, going up and down a wave. Review the distances and make adjustments in the dynamic process of blasting. Ultimately, though, the safety of blasting operations depends on the qualified, competent people using the equipment and the materials observed. And that comes right from the 17th edition of the Handbook of the International Society of Explosive Engineers. I wrote the chapter in that book on geology, but I did not write this book. So, without further ado, and thank you for your patience of putting up with all that, I'd love to answer any questions you have and get into any concerns the board may have or any other members attending tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Something I'd like to point out at the cemetery, these two stones are in the same cemetery. And they're about the same age. This is what's called New Haven Arcos, or people call it brownstone. Probably came from Portland, Connecticut, or Middletown. And this is a granitic gneiss, probably further north. I'm going to say maybe even Barry, Vermont. But the same age, you can see how well the granite held up over time versus the New Haven Arcos, or brownstone, red sandstone, some people call it. Because of the structure associated with, the laminated structure associated with brownstone. I thought that was interesting. One of the concerns I brought up to our client about the cemetery is some of the tree branches and trees outside of blasting. I was kind of concerned of maybe some maintenance that may need to take place at the cemetery. Just something to consider. Of course.
So the question I have, obviously, the cemetery is one of the critical areas that we want to protect. And just wondering what reconnaissance has been done on the cemetery. Has there been a phase 1 historic or archaeological evaluation on it? One of the things with historic cemeteries is people aren't always just buried with gravestones. So we really need to be conscious of where people may have been buried. Uncle Joe, who the family disowned, might be not buried. He might be on the other side of the wall. Black slaves, indentured servants didn't necessarily get buried with gravestones. So I'm just wondering if you're familiar with anything that had been done in terms of the archaeology for the cemetery, so that we know, that we can figure out what the delineation should be for the critical area.
Sure. I certainly have an emotional connection to cemeteries, and a particular cemetery that my family is associated with, but I'm not really familiar with the historical aspect of a variety of people being in a cemetery and the fact that it could overlap or be in other locations. Certainly there's Native Americans and Native American artifacts that have been found, for example, on Mason's Island in Stonington, that have stopped projects or had projects move, that kind of thing. I think what's important to take into account on this project is that blasting is going to occur within feet of the building the client owns. And if they're going to protect that building, just by proxy, based on the distance and the fact that vibration is mitigated over distance, slows down, becomes less, you'll be protecting the cemetery. But with that being said, I think it's super important to take photos of things in place, and that way you can look at the before and after that, or during. And I also believe that there should be seismographs set up to monitor the ground vibration at these locations.
You said it was 165 feet from the outside perimeter of the blast to the cemetery?
From
To the
my
border,
understanding.
to the border of the cemetery?
Yes, and in between the cemetery and that blasting area or rock excavation area is the well for that structure. So that has to be taken into account as well.
Which you're not blasting anywhere near the cemetery in essence, right?
No.
I thought the parking area looked a little closer, but I guess you
Maybe
don't know where
71
the parking area.
Was that the one that was 71 feet away?
Yeah, it was 72, half the distance.
Yeah, that was.
So the 165 feet is to the wall around the cemetery?
Yes.
The Meeting House Rock was the one that was 70 or something.
Okay.
Well, see, there were measurements from the country club building, but I
Did they
didn't
have
see any
a
measurements.
dimension on the meeting house rock?
He mentioned it. Yeah, he did mention it. It's like 400 and something.
Oh, why?
Yeah,
There.
that's- So where's the parking lot blasting? I can see your, the red arrows, but the parking lot, the
So there's
yellow.
a parking lot plan, and that's where that storage building was with the post that was sitting on the rock ledge.
Yeah, but
That's
won't that be a
right,
lot
kind of
closer?
hidden by these trees.
Isn't that a lot closer to the cemetery?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that a lot closer to the cemetery? There's no arrow
Yeah, I
from
understand,
that.
I understand your question. Your
Yes.
question is, your
Yes.
question is going back towards the cemetery, correct?
Yes.
So I did scale that out today, so I knew that answer coming, it's 50 feet. So you're 50 feet from where he's going out that direction, back to
But
the
that's actually
cemetery.
the
for the
closest
parking lot.
blasting, not the.
Yes.
But that's an area that's already existing rock outcarved, like,
Yes,
like
it's-
if I'm not mistaken, there's like, the rock is there on the slope.
Outcrop, yep.
It is.
So they're not burying anybody on the rock.
No, but it's 50 feet or.
No, I
But it's
understand.
within
But
the proximity
to
of
what she's saying
vibration
about, like,
to, yes.
people being outside of the cemetery, like the area that they're talking about is all rock. It's not.
Where there's
soil.
blasting, I'm talking about so that you can,
I think the question is,
So-
being closer, this is the building here we're talking about. What is the distance from here if this rock is to be removed to the cemetery? And I think you're correct. I think this is closer, this area is closer to the cemetery than that 165 feet, yes.
yeah. And I was just picking up on your best management practices that said you will determine where the critical areas are, and that's why I'm saying, are we using the wall as the critical area of the cemetery? Or do we need to, or do, and that's why I was asking if we know if there's been any phase one archaeology ever done. It could be, it could be the Historical Society did it, but if there's ever been any archaeology there so that we know exactly how far away from the cemetery where the critical area is that you would say this has to be protected. So we're looking at the cemetery, we're looking at the well, we're looking at the structure. All of those are the critical things that we need to say. And I was just looking at the idea that the stone wall around the cemetery may not be the best air, that's
Sure.
where everybody's measuring to, and I'm saying we may need to measure a different way, so.
Agreed, and they'll have multiple seismographs on site. For example, there'll probably be one, you always put it between the blast area and the structure you're trying to protect. So there'd be a seismograph here, and then there'd be a second one closer to the stone wall of the cemetery. So it would catch the vibration before it got to the stone wall.
Will that include the other adjacent properties that we'll be monitoring? Will you be doing seismic monitoring between the blast sites and the other adjacent properties, not just the?
Yeah, most certainly. And that was stipulated in a discussion I had with the client in terms of their budget for public relations.
And will the line drilling, by the way, thank you.
So it was a discussion of how many seismographs ultimately.
Thanks for both the geology tutorial and the blasting technology.
You're welcome, with pleasure.
Will line drilling be used for all of the blasting or selectively based on proximity to?
My recommendation, all of the blasting. It has to be done to protect that structure because like this structure, I went into the basement or crawl space of this structure and it is built with posts on concrete piers on the ledge. And if you heave this rock, and even if you blast over here, if you move this a little bit, it's a lever that essentially changes the elevation of the deck. So line drilling would be conducted along this plane, or this post would be removed and be supported elsewhere so that blasting could occur and then you could put the post back in. And that would be another recommendation.
Can you talk a little bit about the error tolerance of blasting as opposed to
What tolerance?
error tolerance? So if a mistake is made,
I'm sorry.
the effect on the risk to adjacent properties based on an error being made.
So, again,
The blasting
monitor.
versus the canal.
I'm not following you.
So if an error is made in the cell.
Errors.
Yes, error. Error
Oh,
tolerance.
so that gets back to that test blasting and that the micro blasting that occurs to protect. So what would fail if there was an error would be this structure or this structure, not the well not the cemetery, not the house 400 feet away. Because again, the blast design is designed to protect super close. The tough part about that is if the blasting contractor screws up the building, they've got to pay for it and fix it. And explosives insurance is kind of like automobile insurance for teenagers. You know, if they use it, they lose it, so to speak. So I feel comfortable that the surrounding structure can be protected just by the sheer design of what is being conducted on site. I think it can be kept quiet. I think there can be a public relations program put into place where there's communication, concerns addressed. Monitoring has to be done thoroughly by an independent party approved by the insurance company. $5 million insurance policy for the permit that's associated with the use of the product.
Yeah, blasting is considered to be ultra hazardous, and you're stuck. If you make a goof, you have to fix it. There is no tolerance for making a mistake.
That's correct.
So that's why this gentleman has to be so precise.
And that's good enough for the folks who are initiating the project. I'm thinking about the people who are.
Well,
Sure.
but it's gonna be, it's his company that would be responsible if they moved that building or whatever. You know, the country club also holds him to the same standard.
Well, I understand that you're responsible.
Yes.
It's a matter of the.
They're absolutely responsible. Everybody, including the
Collateral
neighbors and
damage,
everybody else. Anybody
What
who
I'm asking
can
about.
claim that they moved something like a whole
I think-
darn inch.
I think based on your presentation of the facts, that it would be the best option as opposed to hammering it over a long period of time. I mean, I can imagine that using a jackhammer on an excavator is going to be far more intrusive to everything around it as opposed to a specific, dedicated, direct, engineered blasting solution.
I would agree with that. I mean, rock is tenacious. It just takes a long time to chip it out. It just, even with the structure that's associated with this rock, and you can get in areas that are very homogeneous that don't have pre-existing cracks. Hammers work really well when you have structure. If you have geologic structure, like diced rock that has pre-existing cracks in it, where the water's gotten in possibly and the frost has caused it to expand, hammer works great because that'll chip those weak bonds between the rock and it'll come apart. But in the case of this rock, it's just not cost effective. Hammers are getting stronger and stronger and more powerful, but they still haven't replaced the rapid expansion of gases in a confined area. And that's what we're doing.
How many blasting areas will there be?
So I believe 3, and that gets back to our, I don't know where that photo was, where I listed the rock in yellow. No, I don't know where that was.
So if there's 3 blasting areas, in the initial application, I believe there was 1 questionable area. So have anything in the plans changed, expanded or contracted that requires now additional blasting?
No, the plans are the same.
There was 1 area close to the cemetery that was in question.
That would be the parking lot. So your parking lot is most adjacent to the cemetery. So you have 3 areas. You have the foundation coming off the addition, and that's where your deepest blasting will be portrayed because you're going down to a depth of 14 feet. Whereas your parking lot, you're boxing out a parking lot, you're going down a foot or so. And it doesn't expand, that rock doesn't expand that entire parking lot. Even the rock that Rick is showing in this picture that is close to that racquetball court or racquetball house, that's actually getting demoed down, so we don't have to protect that. But that rock is actually an outlier, the majority of it, of the parking lot. If you look at the drawings, it goes around it. There's a little bit of blasting there, but not a ton.
So then is this an unexpected result of getting into the construction?
No, this is just the best means and methods and practices is to go to blasting.
So we knew there was rock there initially.
We always knew there was rock there, that's correct.
I think the original engineer that looked at the site work believed that the rock could be removed due to the geologic structure with a hammer. And I'm saying it cannot. And what will eventually happen if they do use a hammer, they'll hammer away for a period of time, weeks, and then they'll say, we can't break this rock, now what are we gonna do? So the client has asked me to come in and explain how this can be done safely, quietly, and with communication. By the way, when those seismographs are set up, they take a reading, and then they email the reading to anyone who wants it. So, and we're transparent. So within minutes, you can get a reading at any location that those seismographs are. The construction manager, the fire marshal, whoever wants to look at those readings. It's really nice. It's a nice setup, including ourselves.
Could you go back to your checklist, please?
I'm sorry?
You had a thing with your checklist?
Sure, I can give you a copy of that. Yeah.
Well, we're going to actually need a copy of this entire
Yeah, why not?
presentation.
Yeah.
This is now an exhibit to our hearing, so
Sure.
I'm going to need you to give me a copy of your presentation electronically so I can add it to the record here, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah, I'll send it over, Rick.
So with the guidelines, what I'm looking at is would we then have something like this that says everything you're gonna do on each blasting site so that we know which structures need to be protected on each blasting site and that would be submitted? I mean, you'll have it, but I think it would be good if we had it submitted to us so that we would have it on file so that, you know, because this is the blasting plan. Something, all of a sudden a neighbor calls and is concerned, we have it on file. Because I think that this is a really good document.
So
Kind of like, you know, for this layman's terms, erosion and sediment control plan.
Sure.
We have it on file. This is the blasting guidelines. I think having it on file for each area you're going to do the blasting so that we have those critical areas, you know, talked about and how far you are from it and why it's going to be protected. I think it's really important.
What we do have to remember is every site is site specific, and there's
Yeah.
a little caveat down here. So we have to consider animals, you know, people have horses, I mean, it's really site specific.
Well, that's why I want that filled in. I don't want
Sure.
I just don't want the generic. I want it filled in.
And this is typically something we share with the fire marshal's office.
Yeah.
Because that's who regulates the explosives industry, whether it's a state fire marshal or the local fire marshal, or both.
Yeah. But like I said, when you say establish pre-survey contracts, that should all be filled in. We should have this, you know, filled in so that we have it for each of the blasting sites. I think that before you've started, that would be really good for us to have on file.
Golfers entering, I like that.
Is there any bond requirement for this kind of project?
Sure. Oh, you're asking me? I'm sorry.
I'm just asking, someone who knows, because I don't.
Again, this is all regulated by the fire marshal. So as a general rule, no, we don't bond for the zoning side because this is regulated elsewhere. It's regulated through the fire marshal's office.
And the insurance company.
That's the
Well,
fire
Dan, I get the
marshal.
insurance thing, but if someone hits your car and it's not your fault, you still have a lot of hassle and you don't have a car. So I'm just looking at it from that angle.
Which is why it's important to have an independent party do the monitoring. Because they're experts and trained in that.
They have talked to the fire marshal about it, but he has not reviewed a plan yet because they have not gone through preparing a plan until they know they have permission from you guys to do it. So the original approval said no blasting. The answer is they can't do blasting until you say they can. So the fire marshal has been contacted, but there's been no plan given to him to approve it yet.
I'm gonna say that maybe makes sense, but I'm also gonna say he's one of our experts in the town and this sort of thing. It would be nice to have had his input.
Okay, but that's sort of, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But his approval of the blasting permit is independent of this commission's authority. I mean, we certainly can have his report added into our file afterwards, but I mean.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, it's kind of circular. When they got the approval to the original
Yeah.
approval, one of our caveats or conditions was that they were gonna have all the feedback from the fire marshal. This board never heard that that came in. So hence my question, maybe we need to hear from him earlier in this process.
I think what Mary Jo is asking is that the fire marshal, stop me if I'm wrong or correct me, review this presentation when the checklist and everything is all filled in and approve that or offer any input. And then secondly, at the permit, he also approves the permit. Is that,
I think.
I don't know the process.
Okay, I
Okay.
guess my concern is this. As a rule of law, you are not allowed to condition your permit on an independent authority which you have no control over. And therefore, ultimately, if you believe this is a good idea or a bad idea based on your regulations, you can approve it or not approve it. Whether it meets the blasting requirements of the fire marshal is his separate, independent evaluation. So,
agreed. But could we ask for his input on this plan?
yes.
That's separate of the blasting.
You can ask for his input, but what he's gonna tell you is, I will review it when I get it. But they haven't prepared the final blasting, as far as I'm aware, they haven't prepared the final blasting plan.
Okay.
And, I guess, asking them to spend the money and everything else on a blasting plan, only to have you say no, is usually not how this works.
So sequential, our approval paves the way for the permitting process.
Yes, that's
And
usually
so
how.
he could override it. I mean, we might.
We allow
We could approve
it.
it.
But he doesn't have to permit it then.
Well, no, I mean, that's
Okay.
why you apply to him, and he has separate independent authority to review what he has to do.
Then that makes sense.
Sort of like
Okay.
Reg Light has separate independent authority to do what they have to do. We all have our piece of the puzzle on getting this approved. So yes, I mean, ultimately, if he doesn't like their plan, I'm guessing he won't just say no, he'll say modify it in the
Right.
following way, shape, or
Right.
form. But this will have to go to him to make sure he is okay with whatever happens next.
Okay.
Okay?
Did
Okay.
we have any feedback on the original plan that would,
Not to my
be
knowledge,
important for
no.
us to know at this point?
Not to my knowledge. Because originally they weren't proposing blasting.
They
No,
wouldn't
I
have gone
know
to
that, I know that.
And as far as the rest of this, there were no fire marshal sort of implications to what they were proposing. So the short answer is no, we do not have input so far. And again, I'm happy to provide for this zoning file whatever future reviews and approvals he gives, so we'll have them. But I'm not sure we can hold up this permit until he's taken action, because that's not usually how the sequence of events
No,
works.
we can't.
Exactly.
I don't think anyone's asking to hold that up.
Okay.
I think
I'm just
that,
asking if he'd had any input and chance to review this. And I
Not
know historically, in other applications in my history here, the fire marshal has been asked for their input. So
Right.
this is not coming out of left field.
I think that's what's driving the question. I agree. Yeah. Previously, we said, has the fire marshal approved this? So that's,
I understand.
so that, take it from folks that are kind of uneducated.
I understand.
We're just trying to clarify this and make sure
I understand what you're
but I
asking.
understand it now, so.
Okay.
if I can make a comment, I want to say that I can appreciate the applicant's due diligence in hiring the people to bring us this presentation. I think that was probably one of the most thorough presentations from a third-party consultant in an application that we've heard. And I feel really comfortable with the knowledge base that they've retained here to accomplish the job they've set out to do. I mean, personally, I'd rather see them blast and be over quickly than inconveniencing everybody in the community with drilling and hammering for weeks at a time. I think that personally, they proved their case here, in my opinion.
I'd like to get through the rest of the public hearing before we weigh in on that, let the folks.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I'm commenting during the public hearing. I guess I'm not seated, so this is my only time to comment.
If I could comment about the fire marshal historically, the process typically starts with the fire marshal on a site review. And with that site review, he gets an understanding of what the project involves and what his concerns are, or what the community concerns are. And he lets us know that. And then the next step is the application process for the permit to use explosives, which he channels through the state fire marshal's office and back. And in that process, he will say, I want you to conduct pre-blast surveys within so many feet. Every structure within 200 feet or 250 feet. Or he'll say, every structure within 250 feet, but I know Mrs. Jones and she's very sensitive, or she has sensitive animals or something that I think you should survey that structure, or the wall for the cemetery or the cemetery stones. So we get feedback from him on a local perspective. And then once the permitting process is conducted, he sees that we have federal, local, and state licenses. He verifies insurance, verifies that we've documented underground utilities. Then he monitors the seismograph results, the sound levels, to assure that they're not over 133 decibels. He monitors the ground motion, ground vibration, and typically suggests limits that may be more strict or more stringent than others as a suggestion. And then he monitors complaints or concerns. It goes to his office that Mrs. Jones's dog is upset and we need to call her every day we blast or minutes before we blast, that sort of thing. So he becomes the local expert on that sort of review. And we have that feedback, and we've worked with the fire marshals in most towns based on some of the presentation.
That was helpful, thank you.
And every fire marshal is a little different,
And how many days?
meaning they have more concerns about certain things than others. And that may be relative to the rock type in that town, or it may be relative to the topography, that sort of thing. One thing I didn't mention is that if you chop the base of a tree, the top of the tree shakes quite a bit, kind of like a tuning fork. But if you're chopping the top of the tree, the base doesn't typically vibrate. Meaning, when you're working on top of a hill, the structures down below the hill aren't subjected to the same amount of vibration as if you're at the bottom of the hill and there was a structure on the top of the hill. So that's something that we talk about with the fire marshals, and this may be a little further away than our typical radius for a survey or monitoring, but because it's higher in elevation, I think you should do this. And they're careful to avoid liability.
When we had the previous hearing, one of the public concerns of the public was that rock that you mentioned where the original meeting house was. Can you maybe expand on how you think we need to, any extra protections we need for that than the general?
Well, the first thing that struck me about the meeting house was I'd like to see it. It's just sort of engulfed in vines and poison ivy and leaves, because then you have a better understanding of what you're dealing with. Is it just stacked stones, or is it cut stones that sit flat? Is it in good shape? Is it in bad shape? That sort of thing. And then with that, being able to see it, we'd like to photograph it. So we know, okay, this is the condition today. Let's document that. The fire marshal could have access to those pre-blast survey notes and photos if necessary, as well as the insurance company or the state fire marshal's office. And then based on what we see, we will create a blast plan that protects that structure.
What about the rock itself with the plaque? Do you have any concerns about that? You showed us the picture of the rock with the plaque, kind of indicating that was where the meeting house was. Showed us a picture of that. Do you have any concerns about that?
Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but
Right off Johnny K.
the distance.
The sign, the boulder with the sign on it.
See that?
Boulder with the sign on it.
Yeah, there's a
Right off
boulder with
Johnny
a
K.
bronze
Road.
plaque.
Oh, that's near the road. That was near Johnny Cake Road, yes. What about it?
Do you have any specific or concerns about that particular rock?
No, because
It's design blasting.
it looks pretty stout, the rock itself. It's sitting in place. the plaque is screwed into and cemented into it.
They're literally blasting like 5 feet from the side of their current building, and we're worried about a rock that's 300 feet away.
Well, that was a concern in the hearing for just the previous non-blasting plan. So the member of the public who spoke to that concern is why I'm bringing it up again, because now we're blasting.
Sure.
So I want to make sure that that person's concerns were aired.
When I saw it, the first thing I thought of was, it'd be nice to have a fence around it so nobody backs into it or bumps into it, that kind of thing. But I don't believe there's going to be any work at that location per se. And where the parking lot is proposed, you have the structure itself and then the plaque and rock. So if you protect that structure, you'll protect the rock.
So is the meeting house?
But
on
again, that
property-
can be photographed and documented and part of that pre-blast survey.
Is the meeting house on property now owned by the country club? Who owns that piece?
I
Is it?
believe it's outside the property line.
Yeah, I just wondered who owned it.
So does the town own it?
I don't think so. Meeting house wasn't a town.
I'd have to take a look, I really don't know.
Well, that's a good question, because if they would like to see the foundation
Right.
and measure it and take pictures and understand its construction, then that has to be cleared. But we have to get the property owner who owns that piece to clear it. Obviously, if it's not owned by the country club, they can't clear it.
Well, it's not even relevant to this application.
Well,
yes,
it
it
may be
is.
relevant because
It may be
if
relevant
they
to
need
the
to
blasting
protect
plan.
it, they need to know what it consists
You
of.
just gave a presentation on how they're protecting.
And the little conversation a second ago was about the gentleman would like to see that, but he can't see it because of that. He would like to, because of the overgrowth.
In relation
He'd like
to-
to take pictures and he'd like to document it.
In relation to this blasting plan, do
Yes.
you want to have protection of that rock, sir?
Not of the rock. of
No,
the meeting
the
house.
foundation.
Foundation,
Yeah, not the
not the plaque rock.
Because it is all overgrown in that picture. There.
So right there.
The one on the right.
So with winter coming on, we'll lose some leaves, but
Where's this
It's
rock
kinda
in relation
overgrown.
to this photo?
so this is right behind this. Probably,
So then that would
50
be
feet
ideal
away.
to have that cleared so that the plaque then shows
What it is.
what it is that it's right.
Well, maybe it's part of the road bed. Maybe the
and
right
there's
of way
a
was
photo I have
there.
of it.
The town could own it.
I'll have to do some research.
If the town owns it, then we can have it cleared by the
I don't know why
town.
the town
Good
would
luck
own
with
it.
that.
I don't, the short answer is, Paul, I don't have the answer. It is something we can figure out. It is
Yeah,
not,
yes.
it is not
Right.
impossible to figure out.
Yeah. No, and I really appreciate you having those concerns, so thank you.
Not holding
What's
to this.
important is to document what's here.
Right.
How many days of actual blasting do you anticipate?
I have not evaluated that.
Okay.
And that is very dynamic. Someone, based on the structure, whether it's parallel to the building or perpendicular to the building, may increase or decrease the number of microcharges based on how those explosive gases enter into the geologic structure. So with that being said, after a test blast, monitoring how much of an area is affected, they'll have a better understanding of the geologic structure and how many charges you could initiate or not, and how that will affect those posts sitting on concrete footings on top of the ledge.
Yeah, it seems like the town right away is pretty wide at the top of that street.
So they would own it?
The town. No, yeah, I know. Obviously, it's not a survey, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, Eric's gonna kind of investigate that for us then.
Ed Dante may know.
Yeah.
We'll have to do some looking into it.
Yeah, maybe the historical society has.
Nobody seems to love it. I know.
That's for certain.
Yeah,
Cemetery.
to keep it clean.
I'll take a lot of stuff. That results down to our public works department.
So are there any other questions for our blasting expert?
I guess this is, you indicated you're gonna have a communication plan developed. So, I mean, obviously that would be important for lots of people, but have you guys kind of talked about how often you put out a communication to the neighbors? Is that, you won't know till you do your testing? Okay.
So that communication plan really starts out with the notification forms. And by notifying the surroundings, people come back with concerns or not. And then once those concerns are reviewed, you take appropriate measures to work within those concerns. Again, what we have to keep in mind in terms of the blast design and that list that we have is that we're trying to protect this structure right here. So we're living in a world right next to the TV, and the structures that are even 100 feet away will be protected just by the principles of physics if you're protecting this structure.
Mr. Glazer, you said that structure's coming down now?
Yeah, that structure's actually coming down.
I'm sorry?
That structure right there is coming down.
This
So
one?
that'll be down.
Just an example.
Right,
So this structure, sure.
I'll go for the full boat then. Load up the hole.
Is the whole structure coming down or just the deck?
That whole racquetball, that's an old racquetball hut.
Yeah.
It's going away.
So, I mean, I think that's one of the things that we'd be really interested in is identifying that critical area. Like, what do you know, where are you protecting to, so that we know what the radius is? Because if the critical structure or whatever we want to protect is outside of, you know, that closeness, we need to know that, because then it's a matter of looking at the cemetery, looking at the well, looking at whatever. We want to, so I think identifying what your what the critical area is really important.
And that will be identified with each blast on the seismograph when it monitors. So it will monitor the distance from the blast site to the seismograph, and it will monitor, and that will always be between the blast and the structure. And that will all be listed in a printout, if you will, or emailed chart of the readings.
Yeah, and I understand that. I guess I was just saying that's what we need to know what the critical structures are that they've identified.
Sure.
So if we have, so that then we know where your monitor is going to go in between.
Sure.
But I just want a list of like, okay, what have you determined are the critical structures?
So to provide clarity, the seismograph would say 10 feet off the ancient foundation structure on the northeast side, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that 5 years from now, you can look at that document and go right to that point. And that would be printed out and sent to the fire marshal's office as soon as it happens. It will also document anything else that happens. So if you have a thunderstorm or a tree falls, or it will monitor that and pick that up. And they're so sensitive, it can measure the vibration from a furnace coming on outside of a house. Like the furnace kicks on, it'll pick up that vibration level.
So you don't get it now, you get it when they're doing it.
I'm sorry?
For you. You're not getting this now, you're gonna get it.
Well, we're gonna get the information in terms of the monitoring piece, but we need to, what we should, and we don't need to write this today, but we do need to know what they're measuring against. It's like, okay, if this building's coming down, is it the well? That's the closest thing. What's the what's the critical piece that you're gonna really be measuring against? And then anything outside of that, the cemetery, the this, or that, are all outside of that. So I'd love to know which structure, is the most critical one that they're gonna be,
Isn't that what
doing
you're
that.
drawing with the arrows on it, a heart?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what he's giving
Well,
you.
he gave us how far those are, but he was saying that because he was using this structure, which we know is coming down, and saying like those other ones are automatically protected. I want to know what structure is gonna be the critical one they're gonna measure off, so then I know that that 125 feet structure is protected.
When you measured from this structure though, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, you were measuring from that structure, your points were from that bedrock.
Yeah,
And that was sort of a general overview.
yeah. No, I understand the concept, believe me, it's like, but, you know, just for clarity, it's a matter of, he was saying like, oh, obviously the 125-foot structure away is protected if we're protecting this. That structure's not gonna be there, so what I'm saying is, when your people, when they're making the design, how close are they gonna be to the nearest structure? So, you know, because they don't have to be as sensitive, if that building's coming down, they don't have to be as sensitive.
Right, that
And
building's
then
gone.
exactly.
So when we do the parking lot.
So now the next structure becomes the town,
Foundation.
the old town hall.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, so if that's so how far is that? What's then the sensitivity? That's what we need to know.
And that will all be
Because it's all about
indicated,
the circumference.
that would be indicated by the independent company that monitors the ground vibration and identifies the locations.
So, just a technical question. Does the line drilling protect, does it provide a path of least resistance for the wave and attenuate the back side?
That's a really great question, because it could. So there's a standoff distance from the line drilling. In other words, if you line drilled this parallel, this line, you would stay away from it a certain distance.
Mm-hmm.
And during the drilling process, the drill rigs monitor inconsistencies in the geology. So they would say at 3.5 feet, there's a joint or an open seam or a soft area that's 4 inches thick or 6 inches thick, that kind of thing. In some cases, most cases, we actually fill those line drill holes with a weaker material like a dust or sand. And then that keeps from the gases venting out those line drill holes. In addition, we also set blasting mats on those line drill holes in case there was some venting up out of those. But they would help to mitigate the vibration. In other words, kind of absorb it like a sponge would.
Right.
And that's the same philosophy.
So does it do it behind the blast site too?
It could be behind, alongside. You know, it's again very dynamic where it would be placed and how it would be used.
So I can understand how the line drilling would protect the structure that was behind the line drilling. But my question is about, does it protect the structures that are behind the?
So in the blast design, you would put it between wherever you're blasting, whatever you're protecting.
So the wave would propagate behind the blast site.
Correct.
Unattenuated.
Correct. And actually the way, if you remember that point of relief slide that I had where like a chunk of rock was coming off like a slice of bread, what happens is when the explosive energy moves to a point of relief, the rock mass moves this way, but you're pushing off to go this way. So the vibration goes in the opposite direction of the movement. So that's a really important consideration, because if you have something that's vibration sensitive, you might want to push the rock at an angle, an obtuse or an acute angle to the structure you're trying to preserve. And that starts getting into, you know, a lot of the details. And those details are indicated by the seismograph reports and what the particle velocity is at those locations around the blast. And that's why those are really critical, and that's why getting them emailed to you instantly is really helpful. Not only for blast design, but also for regulation, you know, regulating what's going on the site, both sound and vibration.
Do you, at least at this point, do you foresee any need for those blast curtains that you showed us?
That's something that would be discussed with the contractor, not for structures outside of the country club itself, but if the country club was concerned about, you know, having dust go into their building. I would assume it's not going to be used during the blasting operations, but that's something that is part of that checklist. You know, you go down and then there's a security program where you make sure people are outside the signed areas. So every means of access, meaning road or walkway, would have a sign on it, indicating what the warning whistles, describing what the warning whistles indicate. And it would say, you know, please stay away when you hear these warning whistles, that kind of thing. And then we'd have people actually standing in locations where you could see to secure the area during the blast. But that's really up to the client themselves. We did that for the neighbors because we didn't want the neighbors to have to wash their windows, kind of thing.
And you were like 14 inches away from it.
I'm sorry?
Because you were like 14 inches away from it.
Yeah. And that worked out well because we could raise them up like a flag, and then we could lower them for the weekend so they could look at the window. But they turned out to be super nice people. Really, really nice. Yeah, really fortunate.
So I have just a quick question for the applicant, and that is, in the materials you submitted to us, did you submit a map that shows us the three sites you're looking to blast? We know that it was the rock stuff, and we have that, but it doesn't say blasting on it. So do we have a new map that says these are the 3 sites that we're going to blast? And then we could look at, and then also distance from the structures that are surrounding it that we would consider that needed to be protected?
Right now, the drawings, what the design team has on there is the bedrock removal that's required to do the addition and the parking lot, so that's already identified. If you're looking for more information on the drawings to identify the distance to the neighbors, that would be part of, if we get permission to blasting, part of the pre-blast plan.
Sure.
Yeah, but, well, I'm saying, you're saying that the existing, does it say on the plans that you're gonna drill, not blast? Because
Doesn't
I'm
say
looking.
either.
It doesn't, it just says you're gonna remove bedrock.
Remove bedrock.
Okay, so then we know that those so then we can look at that. Because so with that said, do we, on the maps then, does it show, like, for example, the well, the cemetery, the ancient town hall foundation, are those located on that map?
Yes.
Okay.
What's interesting about this is we can see the rock at this location, but part of the building has to be removed to excavate the foundation. We may find there's quite a bit of rock, or not as much as expected. It's sort of some unforeseen circumstances with the photo of the building on the right. With the racquetball building, which is going to be torn down, it's obvious what has to be removed.
Any other questions? Questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience through all of that.
Okay. So if the commission is satisfied at this point, I will open up to the public hearing. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment about this application, they're welcome to come forward, provide us with your name and address, and provide us with your comments. So with that said, is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a public comment on this application? Okay. Silence is golden. Commission, are we all set? Is there any more discussion amongst us, especially with our alternates regarding any questions?
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Okay, so I do have a motion that we close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Denise Savageau. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, so the public hearing is closed. Thank you. Okay, moving into our regular meeting, first item of business is in fact this case. Case 25-3, the 40 McCurdy Road special application at the Old Lyme Country Club for what we've just heard.
I'm going to make a motion that the request to modify their prior approval to include blasting be given the okay.
Okay, so did everyone hear that?
Could we modify that to say microblasting?
Yes, however we would like to word it.
Sure.
So, Eric, did you write that down?
Okay, is it,
There's a motion
the
to,
motion to modify
To
the,
approve their application to modify their, whatever we gave us,
Their
Okay.
existing,
special permit application to include microblasting.
okay, not approve to, okay, let's, request to approve applicants, application, let's just
Right.
approve
Yeah.
To
application
modify
to modify,
their special permit
okay,
to include microblasting. I guess in accordance with the wonderful presentation that we received.
for testimony given. Okay.
so the motion is to,
Request to approve application to modify the special permit to include microblasting per testimony given.
is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mary Jo Nozel. Discussion.
yeah, I think it would be good if we just put a couple of conditions on as well.
Okay,
And that is to limit the microblasting to the 3 bedrock removal areas shown on the existing plans.
Okay, yeah, that's one. Do you have any?
Yeah, and then the microblasting guidelines be submitted prior to any blasting taking place. Be submitted to the zoning office.
And all applicable fire marshal input, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's, that's gonna be true whether or not we get a condition or not. Do you want my office notified before the actual blasting takes place?
Yeah, I think the guidelines should be on file.
Okay, the guidelines as well, with the actual dates of the blasting, should they notify me?
That's
That's
in the
gonna be-
guidelines.
Okay,
yeah, and I also think we should have in the file all of the blasting seismic reports that come out.
okay.
That should be made part of this.
After the fact.
That's after all the
So the monitoring report.
the monitoring reports, right.
Okay. So the 3 conditions I have here are, number 1, to limit the blasting to the 3 areas shown on the plan, that the microblasting guidelines be provided to the zoning office prior to blasting, and 3, the blasting seismic reports should be added to the file post-blasting.
Post-blasting.
And just, in terms of the guidelines, just make sure that it's not like, we don't want the guideline template, we want the information, so. As long as it's.
A completed
Yeah.
completed guideline.
Okay, microblasting
Or a completed
guidelines
check.
as completed prior to the, okay. Submitted to zoning office prior to blasting. Okay? So we've got Jane's motion, request to approve the application to modify special permit for microblasting per the testimony given. And then the 3 conditions, limits to the 3 areas shown on the plan. The guidelines as completed, submitted to the zoning office prior to blasting. And then post-blasting, the blasting seismic reports to be added to the file.
Fine.
Okay?
Any
anything
other
else?
discussion?
And those will be after the fact of our decision, and we will have no more sway at that point. It's strictly record keeping.
Well,
Right.
yes, so, but again,
The fire marshal will have ultimate decision to approve our approval.
But also, if any further special permits are needed in the future, you'll have the records of what happened here in our file, so we have a baseline to go from going forward.
Yeah, I think that based on the presentation, it makes good sense and it's thought through to do the blasting, but in this case, we seem to be dealing with a lot fewer details than we normally make decisions on. And if that's the process, that's the process.
Well, again, technically, your piece of the puzzle is, should they be allowed to proceed with the application for blasting or not?
So it's a checkpoint, not the end.
Yeah, your jurisdiction over the blasting itself is essentially out of your
Right.
control.
Right.
But whether you think blasting was a good idea or not is sort of your threshold question. You previously said no, now you're being asked to say yes, and that's where we're going forward from here.
And I spoke prematurely, we haven't approved anything yet. So, again, for a final time, any additional discussion? Okay, then based on the motion made and the 3 conditions, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Okay, then the motion as written and presented and modified is approved. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation, thank you very much. Excellent.
Per your relocated
per
thing
the-
here, you're now at 125 Shore Road.
Okay. Did anybody need a break or? No, we're good? Moving on. Mr. Feltoff is sitting on your hands.
What?
Mr.
Sitting on
Feltoff
his
sitting on his hands.
Sitting on his head and making eye rolls at you.
Oh, really?
I will.
We approved that application for 50,000 yards of material blasting. We didn't give it the due diligence, we just used it.
Well,
This is
when you,
when you have anything to
they were
discuss,
poo-pooing cemetery
if you have many things to discuss,
they were
you
getting
have
into
a map scale at 12.
things like wetlands,
You're gonna,
environmental stuff.
you're gonna have to
That was like
excuse
in
me.
the 60s, that was like in the 60s, early 70s, and it's like, whoa.
I think one of the people who applied for this felon was a
Considered
Russian oil geologist. I was
If
like,
anything
I'm
happens
not
to
sure we
any
have
of
a
those
big need
people,
for
they
Russian
get
oil
paid.
Oh,
geology.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's much better than most things.
Don't live it.
Well, we went to the best university in Russia for this, and I was like, that's great, I just don't know that we,
Absolutely.
Okay,
Must be because I'm ball and chained to my desk.
so the next item on the agenda is 8.1, and that is an informal discussion, so there's no voting but it's an informal discussion of 125 Shore Road per, what am I struggling for? Per 13B.3.1.
that's just the section of the regs that allows for pre-application meetings.
Okay, okay. So here we are.
That's the proposal, I'm assuming, I don't know. Consensual for better.
Yeah, good.
We ready to go?
It's probably just the critical coastal resource setback one. All right, sorry.
Okay.
Good
welcome.
evening. Good evening. So for the record, my name is Joe Wren. I'm a professional engineer, owner of Indigo over in Old Saybrook. I've been doing work in towns and this town for a couple decades now. This particular site we wanted to bring in front of the zoning commission just as this informal, again, like you had mentioned, no voting. There are contract purchasers of this property, and they are our clients, but before they kick the can too far down the road and design and everything, they just wanted to get your preliminary feedback to see if they kind of have a green light or a yellow light or maybe even a red light to proceed forward. So really they're just looking at your, again, informal feedback on this. They will need variances for this, but we can't go to ZBA. The regs don't allow us to go to ZBA and ask for informal feedback from ZBA. So one stop along the way, we will need a special exception, and that's why, because the house is greater than the 4,000 square feet in the Gateway Conservation Zone, so we will have to come back. If we get that far, we will have to come back for a formal application through you, so that's why we wanted to just get your early feedback on that. So the site is at 125 Shore Road. If you're familiar with it, it's marsh, the river in the distance. There is an older home tucked in the left upper corner of the property looking in from the street, and I highlighted on this map in orange. On the reduced ones that you have, it's kind of a faint yellow, all the existing structures on the property. And then there's a fairly large deck in the back as well, and then there are a couple other sheds on the property. I highlighted in yellow on this map the existing driveway. That's fairly large, and it comes through the 50-foot and the 100-foot buffers as well. So just to orient you on the map, this is the tidal wetlands. The property line runs along here. There's just a thin band of wetlands that actually on this particular property. This land that's mostly marsh goes with this property, but it's a separate parcel. It's not the same parcel of land. So there's just a thin band on this property, but we still have the 50 and the 100-foot tidal wetland setbacks and coastal resource tidal waters protection setbacks and so forth. So 50 feet from the nearest part, which is the tidal wetlands in this case, we have this first green line here. So the majority of everything that would be proposed is landward of that 50-foot line. Gets close to it right in this area. It's a little farther away from it here. But the 100-foot setback comes all the way back here, and that leaves us, the pink are the yard setbacks, the applicable yard setbacks, side and front, and then we have the 100-foot area. So you can see that the existing house is non-conforming to the front yard, non-conforming to the side yard. This house would resolve those. It would demolish the old one, build new. It would resolve those existing nonconformities and build it conforming to the setbacks. But the house that they would like to proceed with this kind of an upside down T shape, and then with a pool up in this area here, some of this development, all of this piece, this leg, and then the pool would be in that 50 to 100-foot zone.
Not concerned about sea level rise at all?
Well, this is in a flood zone. So there is a flood zone line on here.
I know, that's where it is now.
So
Also, by new state statute, will require a CAM application. Per October 1st, new single-family houses in this location will require coastal area management permits as well.
yeah, and anything within 100 feet, even historically, previous to October 1st, required sometimes single-family homes were exempt, but structures like pools and larger structures and stuff were not. Some of this will be within the 100-foot zone. But going back to the flood zone is delineated on here on the map. There is a V zone, the wave velocity zone, which is on the marsh side of that line. And the entire property on this side is within the A zone. So all of the proposed construction would be in the less dangerous A zone. And none of it would extend into the more dangerous V wave velocity zone.
But it's still in the zone.
It's still in the zone, but it would have to be built to FEMA requirements and the town flood ordinance that adds another foot of freeboard. So all of the construction of the house would be FEMA compliant.
Is they gonna have to build it up to put it out?
Ironically, the land is higher up in this area, but yes, the structure would have to be built up to be consistent with FEMA, and it can't have a basement either because you're not allowed to have a basement in the flood zone.
So how much higher is it gonna have to be built?
So this little section here that the local architect Nautilus put together And again, this is just schematic. We would have a lot more detail if we extended with formal applications, of course. This piece closest to the road would be the 2-story piece, and it would be, up to the 35-foot allowable height limit. The rest of this all would be 1-story, so you can see in the section, we have the 2-story barn piece, and then this section here is just 1-story, so it's lower to the ground. You can see some of the elevation in here. We have the floor of this would be up at elevation 15, and then the slab, the garage would be up at elevation 12. The flood zone is AE 11, and then as you all know, the town adds a foot to that to 12. So the garage slab in this preliminary rendition is equal to the FEMA plus the 1 foot, but the main body of the structure the residential structure is 15, which is 4 feet higher than the 11 flood zone. And even higher than the nearby V14 zone plus the foot would be equal to that.
Yeah, 1 story.
And, those elevations are just preliminary now, just for this portion. There would be a lot more information later on. But we just wanted to get your feedback. We know what, Gateway has taken a stance that nothing within the 100-foot zone should be allowed. So we need variances to do that. We have received variances in most of all the Gateway towns in this particular situation, and we would have to you wouldn't really be approving this per se, you'd be approving the size of the house over the 4,000 square feet. That's where your regulation comes in. ZBA would be anything closer than 100 feet, ZBA would have to approve.
So help me with the orientation, I'm sorry. There's another big house to the left of this, if I'm proceeding.
Yeah, 2 properties over.
There's 2 properties
There's an
over?
older home here, and then Swaney's
Mr.
house.
Swaney, the one that put
Right.
in all the boulders.
Right,
Is
so where's the ice cream? Where's Hallmark?
It's next over.
Oh, no.
Hallmark.
No.
It's one over.
Hallmark's up the road.
Yeah, so Old Lime Seafood, it was in between that.
Oh, that's the empty lot,
No, so if you're
Yeah,
staring at
it's
the Old Lime
empty lot.
Seafood lot, it's to the left.
It's the empty lot.
to the left.
Yep.
To the left.
And then there's
there's a-
Ron's place.
Then there's a house, then Ron's.
Yes.
Yes.
This is where that gully comes in, close to the road.
Okay.
A wetland that comes.
But there's a
over the
house
road.
here now.
Yeah, there is. It used to be
Yeah.
blue, they painted it white.
Black Hall Marina is,
And it's like.
Black Hall
sale
Marina.
by
Yeah, you're right. It was-
Yeah, Black Hall is
I
here,
sold
I
that
know,
house
yeah.
like 5 years ago.
Which is totally underwater today.
This house didn't flood during Sandy or anything.
That doesn't, the past doesn't hold it for the future anymore though.
No, I'm just saying like.
The
just
water
for-
comes into that wetlands. and goes-
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
That's
absolutely.
because Sandy came in at low tide
Yeah.
in this area.
Well, that's why they're proposing to put it up. I mean, they have no choice.
yeah, we propose up and down the shoreline, all the waterfront lots, we propose construction all the time successfully and build it successfully in the flood zone. V zone, A zone, it just has to meet FEMA requirements.
So you said it's above, it's, how much larger than 4,000 square feet is it?
We have, it's noted on here, it's, proposed gross floor area is 4,572 total,
For the entire
the
structure?
entire piece. Yep. This is just 1 floor,
Yep,
and then this is 2 floors, so all of that together is 4,572.
40, okay.
It's just, we have these narrow corridors, it's sprawling on the ground,
Yeah,
but it also meets coverage too. We included those numbers here too, so we're just under the 10% allowable coverage, and we're under, I think it's 15% allowable gross floor area, and we're at 11%. So we're lower than those. We wouldn't request variances of those. We don't think we'd be successful doing that. So really, the only purpose is, for going to ZBA are these 2 legs of this interesting house layout that they would like to do. If they can't build this house or something very similar, they wouldn't build on the lot.
So the variance is specifically for what?
Okay, the variance is that in the gateway zone, if you're within 100 feet of the tidal wetlands there,
Yeah.
you're not allowed to build in the gateway zone. So they need to vary that requirement to be able to build between the 50 and 100. My understanding is you're not building closer than 50, which is prohibited by your standard zoning regulations.
Yeah.
But the gateway piece of your regulations further restricts this area to say between 50 and 100, in the gateway, you're not allowed to do this.
Because you're building over 4,000.
Because you're building over
So if
4,000.
they built for 3,000.
If they built 3,999, they would not need to get a.
We're back at that same issue.
Wait.
No,
let
I'm
me
sorry,
clarify.
no, Jane, I'm mistaken.
Yeah.
I'm mistaken.
Yeah, 'cause 100 foot
The
still.
special permit is 4,001. The variance is closer than 100 feet.
At all.
At all,
Regardless.
the end,
All right.
okay? So anything, I'm sorry, Jay, I got you mixed up.
That's okay.
Anything within a 100-foot setback in the gateway zone requires a variance. That is why they're going to ZBA. It is not for the size of the structure, it is for
The
where
variance
it
of-
is on the lot
Right.
in relation to the tidal wetlands.
If they elected to take 600 square feet of floor area away from this, they won't have to come before your commission.
But they would still be going to
Still have to go
ZBA.
get a variance.
Still
And
go to
are
the
there
variance,
any decks or anything on this, or
No decks, just an in-ground pool
in the
here.
back?
And
Oh, it's actually the front
and a
side.
pool house
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So it's just with the shape of the lot being kind of like a triangle and then all of this
Yeah.
hypotenuse of the triangle being wetlands, it just pushes everything up into that
Yeah.
corner.
It's a familiar shape.
So how do you expect
No,
to
my-
build
my
a house
property now
with
is
no
the same
fill?
shape.
You can't bring any fill in under the FEMA regulations, so what are you looking at doing?
You can bring in fill in FEMA. When it's connected to tidal waters, there's really no limit on fill. If you're in the V zone, they limit the fill to a depth of 1.5 feet. In that area, we're not proposing to do anything in the V zone. In the A zone, you can, because it's connected to an unlimited, infinite amount of tidal water throughout the globe, basically. So you can do that. In an inland situation, if you have a river or a lake, then you have to do what's called compensatory storage. If you add 500 yards of fill here, you have to remove 500, so you balance that out.
Yeah,
In a tidal situation, you can add fill. We do it all the time.
I know people get permits to do it all the time, but I thought that the new regulations from the state were saying that you can't bring fill in.
I mean, certainly, this will get bounced off Jacobson's office. I did not do that for a preliminary application,
Yeah.
but whatever they come in with for your special permit, even with the ZBA, will be going to Jacobson's office for their review. And Jeff Jacobson, who does these reviews, is about the best in the state on this. So I'm pretty confident they'll catch whatever the requirements are.
Oh, yeah. So the other question is, in terms of, because you are gonna be having to do elevation, and you can't have basements and that kind of stuff.
Correct.
Do you know what you're gonna, so just background, I was in charge of all of the home elevations post-Sandy in the town of Greenwich.
Okay.
And one of the things we had was, sometimes you just can build, and other times you don't have the soil, because, that will hold the weight of the structure unless you do a lot of pilings. And I was just wondering if you've done any of that soil testing to know what you're gonna need to do there yet.
We have not, but we did do it 2 properties away. And it's generally sand, the upland out of the tidal marsh, of course, is a decent sand and gravel.
So you got,
Material.
and so you think you've got sand and gravel, you don't think you're gonna have a structural problem
That's
with the
correct.
peats and mucks?
I just so happened to be present on a septic test pit that was done on this house because I sold this house 5 years ago, not to the current owners, but to the prior owner. And there's no mucky peat underneath that fill. Like, it's tidal wetlands right up to the upland, but everything in the upland is a sandy gravel. I'm just saying when I was present at the test pits that were done on that property. It's not like a filled tidal marsh, for instance.
Yeah.
And all that would have to be done for, once we got into the details. They even on buildings like this, they'll usually go out and do borings too that are 30 or 40 feet below the grade, just to make sure.
Yeah, they're all naturally occurring soils.
Yeah, just to make sure if there's no, peat moss down 20 feet or something
That's what I'm talking
after
about.
the ice
I'm
age,
not
they
talking
covered
about
it with
septic
sand and
system.
gravel.
Yeah.
We've seen that before. And even if you do have that situation, sometimes we find that situation, then they just, they'll put pilings on.
That's what,
to
I was
support
just
the
wondering if you were
foundation.
anticipating having to do that here.
But no, spread footings should be reasonable here as long as, it's consistent with what our assumption is, that it's all good natural sand and gravel there.
And based on the mapping that Circa has done for the state of Connecticut at Yukon, They're predicting sea level rise a little bit more aggressively than the FEMA maps. The FEMA maps have nothing to do with sea level rise. They didn't anticipate sea level rise. They weren't permitted to take sea level rise into consideration when they mapped the flooding areas. And I was just wondering if you have looked at this house in relationship to what Circa is predicting for the state of Connecticut in terms of flooding.
Yeah, the tidal wetlands usually run, well, the coastal jurisdiction line runs around elevation 2.9-ish, let's just say 3 for all intents and purposes. By 2050, the Circa is saying that we might see 1.5 feet of sea level rise in this area. Even if we say from 3 to 5, elevation 5 contour is way out here, close to the wetland. So not even close. The house is up to elevation. The lowest ground around where the house would be is elevation maybe 8 or so.
So I remember when we were looking at Ron Swaney's house that for some reason, and I'm not sure what it is, the Black Hall River Basin was much more prone to having higher sea level rise. And I don't know why it was that was the case. But
I don't recall that. We don't have any glaciers that are melting nearby.
No, but it was just that particular little basin there, as opposed to
sometimes
all the
inlets
other
will
places.
have like higher flood zones in areas just because of storm direction and how much water it can push up into that area and so forth. But sea level rise is usually pretty consistent. Like if you look at the Circa maps, they actually have a red line all around the Connecticut shoreline, and it shows you where that.
I remember looking at an NOAA one that had a slider.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular area, no other place in town was by 2050 had a lot more water. And I don't know why, but.
Yeah, even if that's doubled, we're still, we're still up
Yeah,
out
it's
of
just
there.
a shame if somebody builds a really beautiful house.
Yeah, and again, that's just high tide. So at high tide, you expect that water, at the highest high tide, you expect the water to be at coastal jurisdiction.
Yeah, but the high tide impacts eventually, so sea level rise is about elevation of the high tide. But then when you put storm surge on top of that, which is what you have during floods, it's going to be exacerbated. So your flood zone could be that, okay, now you move this up, well maybe so does that mean the VE zone moves up?
Not unless the FEMA map gets revised.
Well,
Logically, yes.
yes, logically, and I'm trying to, our job is to protect the health safety of everybody in the town, including people who might buy this house who don't know what's going to happen, and also to protect the these are the types of things that if we don't pay attention to this, it's our first responders who have to go in because now somebody's, house is flooding. And people don't understand those types of situations. I worked in the Emergency Operations Center in Greenwich and saw houses on fire during Hurricane Sandy, and our first responders having to go in during those type of major events because people didn't know enough to evacuate. For us to then continue to build homes in these situations, I think is something we really need to take consideration of. So being a little flip and saying until they change the FEMA maps, our job is to look at the best information we have, and the FEMA maps aren't the best information we have. The best information we have is coming from Circa, and I think that's one of the things we need to be taking a hard look at.
Yeah, all the construction will be would be consistent with or even better than the codes that are out there. All the building codes, the FEMA codes, Town of Old Lyme has plus 1 foot. The Town of Stonington has recently gone to plus 3 feet. Some Old Saybrook is plus 2 feet, so that's coming too. After Irene and Sandy, FEMA came in and redid all of their maps in this area. Now, yes, that's more than 10 years ago, but they expanded flood zones in areas that never had flood zones before. They raised the elevations. So at least within our modern area in the last 10 years, the models were redone. These lines were redrawn. So, we have that working for us too. We have that background, but we are up on higher ground here. This will be built to all the applicable codes. So, if there's an additional standard that's a code somewhere, this would have to be, in order to get a building permit and get a C of O eventually, it would have to meet or exceed all those codes. So, but we will take that, no, we are close to the V zone and we're already at elevation 15 with the house. So we're kind of consistent with that V zone already, but we can take that into consideration and maybe design just a little bit more, based on your feedback.
Not directly relevant to this pre-application, I will say that the existing house has had work done on it without appropriate permits. The work largely probably exceeds the substantial improvement test. So the existing house would have to be raised, or got raised one way or the other, under current requirements. So the existing house is going away one way or the other. You guys will have to figure out what, if anything, gets to replace it. But again, work has been done on the existing house without permits, and that is going to trigger a whole bunch of other things that will need to come from.
Full disclosure on that, that's not my client. That's not who's proposing this. They're proposing to buy it from them, tear that down, including any work that was done, and then rebuild something that's FEMA compliant.
So do they have a conditional purchase in effect?
They do. Yep, based on the architect doing a little bit of due diligence, us doing a little bit of due diligence, and then
And
feedback.
raising the existing structure and,
No, the existing structure's gonna be gone.
Yeah, he's saying
But-
RAI.
raise, like not raising, but I'm raising like tear it down.
Yes.
That kind of raising.
My clients would not proceed if they were just stuck with the existing house. They would
So
demolish the
they're-
existing house.
Okay, so then they would come back to the zoning commission with plans for an entirely new,
Correct.
or something to that order.
I would imagine based off our feedback tonight, it's gonna help determine whether they're gonna move forward with an application.
Right, I can't get feedback from ZBA, that's not legally possible. So coming to the zoning commission, getting a little bit of feedback, I know what Gateway would say, because they say it in every town, whenever you're closer than 100 feet, we just don't allow structures closer than 100 feet. So we know that already, and they just have to, my clients just have to understand, that there is a certain level of risk, but what is that risk? If we buy this lot and close on it, is there a risk of not being able to build something similar to what we would like to build? Is where they're at. And they know that they can't get yes or no, but they would just like that feedback.
Might be a size restriction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 500 square feet is like the garage.
Well, the garage is the only two-story portion of the house, so if that footprint is 600 square feet, that's 1,200 square feet total floor area.
So looking at a scenario where ZBA does approve it, I'm looking at this guy now. Does the extension out towards the wetlands here, even if fill is not involved, does that constitute platforming? What's going on here?
Yeah, there is fill there, and that's taken into account with the height. So all of that would be much less than 35.
We'd have to look, I mean,
Maybe that would be a question I would have.
yeah, that would be the question.
I don't know that he heard your question.
So, the extension towards the wetlands, the tidal wetlands.
Yep.
I'm looking at this part of it and just asking the question if that would constitute platforming.
So I don't know the exact zoning definition of platforming, but there would be fill in there to build a house on top, because the floor of the house is level and the grade drops off slightly in that area, so you
So
have
platforming
to,
means modifying the grade to elevate the house. so
which
that
is
you can-
perfectly acceptable.
I don't think so on over 4,000 square foot, right?
I'm thinking there might be a disconnect between if it's underneath and it's not a platform, whereas if there's a wall, it's a platform.
Yeah, that's why I'm not asserting it, I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, in my perspective, looking at it, that's a good point, is like, I would look at it as that might not be considered a platform because it's not making contact with the ground.
Right, but there's gonna be some support on it, if not fill, if it's pilings or whatever. Just
Because I guess, how do you not have any sort of platforming?
Platforming is allowed in your zoning regulations, I'm not.
No, it's not, it's,
That's a question, and it's.
Okay,
it's
So then
historic, and
it's not
historic.
considered platforming, because this would be allowed. We've done this before. You add fill and then you build your house. What you can't do,
4,000 square feet?
They call it,
Yeah.
tiering or, there's a whole lot of different.
what you can't do is bring in 10 feet of fill and then build a 35-foot tall house on top of that.
Right.
Because we go from the existing grade. So, the height is not a problem. This is a very low structure. The only two-story structure is this piece that's all the way
It's a one-story house.
closest to the road.
Yeah, so if it's not part of the livable structure, and but it's some artificial means, not fill, that elevates part of the structure to
Allow for floodwaters
to
to go
defeat the
underneath.
grade.
But they're elevating it like that, right? So the water in essence could go underneath it, right?
You get that? This technically does that.
Yeah, well, that's a good point because that might become a problem in the future as people need to raise their properties. Are we going to consider that platforming?
But yeah, if there's a particular section, we would definitely
Well,
look at that. We wouldn't do something that wasn't allowed by your regulation.
And if you look at the gateway regs. it
Yeah,
talks about-
I'm reading from them, it says here, site grading shall avoid straight and unnatural slope faces, cut and fill slopes shall have curved configurations to reflect as closely as possible the forms and shapes of surrounding topography. At intersections of manufactured and natural slopes, abrupt angular intersections should be avoided, and contours should be curved to blend in with the natural shape.
Yeah, for grading, we always do that. It's just a nice uniform kind of blend
This is kind of flat, so.
of grading.
Whereas the platform, like on that other lot, the way the slope of that lot sets that up to be a platform based on the topography of that site.
Yeah. Because what happened.
And that was filled with retaining wall.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, and
big rocks, big, huge rocks.
And all of this is going to go to Jacobson for their comments as well.
so the whole house is gonna be at 15 elevation?
The habitable floor will be 15. Right now, we have the garage at 12 just to maintain a reasonable slope of driveway from the road. Well, here, this driveway, this large paved driveway would all go away. That's all within 100 feet, so that all comes out. And then the new driveway is here outside of the 100 feet. So we pulled the driveway out and it's much smaller, as you can see. So the driveway would be the garage slab would be at 12, and then the living space is at 15.
And where are you gonna put the mechanicals?
The mechanicals they have to be up above flood, so whether they're on either inside the house or on platforms, they have to be elevated above the flood. So they have to be your 11, FEMA zone 11 plus 1 is 12, so the platforms all have to be 12 or higher.
Is this property gonna be affected by the gateway requirement of visibility also?
Well, that is why the 4,000 triggers a special permit.
So they understand that they're not supposed to be visible from the water?
Yeah, but
They're supposed to screen-
anything you build here is going to be visible from the water.
Right, but they have
Because
to
it's
propose landscaping and all kinds
Yep.
of stuff to.
So if you look closely on the map, there's a 15-foot landscape buffer along this whole entire area.
But tall enough to obscure the building?
No, I can't put trees in there.
Well, it has to be indigenous plants that would grow in that type
They're
of
also,
environment.
it's
So-
the view from the water
Right.
in, which is not usually how people like to build their houses.
Right.
They want to be able to see going out, so.
So
it's
they
just-
want to do landscaping along the road for their own screening
Yeah,
from the
of course
road. They
they
want
do.
to do landscaping along the entire wetland buffer, which is better than what's there now, because now it's just mowed and fertilized.
But
along
our
the
job,
edge.
our job is to see a picture of the fully grown landscaping and see as little of their house as possible. And that's usually not what they want.
Yeah.
I just think that's an unrealistic expectation within the regulation personally.
That's what we are, the enforcers of the regulation.
Right. Not ours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
It's,
make them
part
aware
of,
that.
yeah, and that's part of the reason why this is a very low profile structure in there. That whole, these whole two legs are very low profile like that. Section is similar for both. It should back here that's outside of, and remember, all of, half of the structure, all of this is more than 100 feet away. So they don't really have purview over any of this.
Well, it's all
What
in
they
the
have
gateway zone.
purview,
No, just the back part.
well, it's all gateway zone, but the 100 foot is where all the variances are.
Yeah, but the gateway zone is the whole thing.
Yeah, half of Old Lyme is in the
Yeah,
gateway zone.
right.
Parts of Johnny
But
Cake
just-
Killer and
I'm
gateway
just
zone.
hoping that you say something to them about this other kind of review, which is what does it look like from the water side in?
Yeah, we always, so in all of our applications, once they get to that point, we always have a rendering looking in from there. And
And
you're
then-
going to see it, I agree with Mike that anything you build in these type areas that aren't already forested, you're going to see.
Right,
Yeah,
but
but
he,
And they don't
Yeah,
even
James-
consider trees.
Just to back Jane up on this, we're not saying it can't be done.
Right.
We're here for a pre-application, like what advice do we need to do?
Right.
This is an issue that's come up multiple times in the past. And so Jane's simply suggesting, not making a decision one way or another.
Right.
Since it's come up every single time, we've had like 6 applications in the last few months
Yep.
with this issue, and that's been the biggest sticking point. So this, she's just offering friendly advice.
Of course.
That, like, it's likely gonna be, like, where you're gonna spend time planning, that would be it.
Yeah.
So we're
I know
not
where
making a
Jane's, I know where
decision.
Jane's coming from. I've known her probably half my life. So.
So, but I'm old enough to not remember when they had to float a balloon. So if they didn't have a photo of what it would look like, they would float the balloon. Do you remember that, Jane?
yeah,
Yeah, they'd have to float the balloon, take a picture from the water to see if you could see the boats. So a real good photo, a real good rendering is gonna be real important.
Yeah, we've
Just
done
make
that
sure
a
the
lot.
rendering's down low and not up high.
No, we've done that a lot, and very, very realistic looking photo renderings of the looking in from the marsh and the landscape buffer, and then the house to the back.
And they've been particularly coming to me about what glass is going to be facing the water as well because of the.
Right.
So just be aware that they're particularly concerned about glass these days.
Yep, non-reflective glass and then dark sky compliant lighting is another thing that they've been very concerned with. That will all be factored in. That's not a big
well, because the
deal.
glass is lit up at night. And so what you see is they're inside of their glass lit house. And really it is that they can have trees with trunks. They can see around them, but they can't have no trees. They have to have, they're supposed to be, what you see from the water is not their house. You see parts of their house maybe, but, so,
The advantage of this site being that it's not like the other sites,
Yeah.
where the other one is the base floor elevation's at 30 feet,
Yeah.
plus the structure.
Yeah,
Whereas this is gonna be a little bit more low profile
But
'cause
it's
it's
still-
starting out.
since it is low profile, they'll be trying to protect their view. And that's where, they can have views in some directions, but they just can't have this open, unobstructed.
Yeah,
view
no, they're definitely
as much as-
earthy type folks. They definitely want lots
Well,
of
I understand it
landscaping.
on that side, it's
And
the other
they're-
side.
Well, you didn't let me finish. And then all through there, 15 to 20 foot wide buffer over several hundred feet is a pretty significant.
What if there
project.
was a rooftop plantings? Would that satisfy that?
That would
You're
even
gonna
look
say
weird.
Rooftop deck.
That's more about, is the area into the marsh, is that the property boundary? Or is that just what is the property boundary?
So
It's a
the
double
property
parcel.
line is in
Okay,
here,
that's the property
and
line.
as I had stated earlier,
They own
this
both
parcel, that's all wetlands and non-buildable, goes along with this, but they are separate parcels.
It's 4
Okay.
acres.
Okay, so they do own them.
Yeah, they own up to the river.
Yeah, there's
If
like
you
a
zoom that out,
1
I can point
acre
it out
parcel
exactly.
and then like a 3
Well, I'm
acre
looking at it,
parcel,
I was
something
just
like
wondering.
Yeah, that Tidal Creek is the property line.
So I guess it wasn't totally negative today for you.
No, not at all. And, again, just coming here friendly, we had kind of advised them to do this rather than just going for it. Come in, seek the advice of people that will be looking at this and reviewing this and, voting on the decision, getting some of that feedback, garnering that advice, and then implementing that into the house design and the site design as well. So we had we'll look into platforming and make sure that's not done in any way a little bit further. And then the view from the river and the landscaping, that's going to be important. And then, potentially consider going less than 4,000 square feet is something else that they consider. They may not want to do that, so you may see this in the future as an application. If they're successful, we'll go to ZBA first, make sure we can get variances, because if they can't get variances, they can't go forward.
Right.
Like I said, we just can't go there on a preliminary basis and get that feedback. So we came to you to get your friendly advice, and we appreciate that. And if it proceeds, we'll definitely incorporate all of it.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good,
What's that?
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want these things?
And if you bring up a really good point about the over-reliance on the FEMA flood maps, which are, when we go into.
What time is it?
8:41. Rewrite. It's a problem, because it's based on historical data, which is tough.
Yeah. They supposedly they did that after, but they didn't do it.
They're supposed to be done every 5 years, and they're not well funded either, so they're not very specific.
Even the ones they did after Sandy were, they already had a plate where they didn't do any.
Nothing
Well, I guess what I'm saying.
Are both of those doors downstairs handicapped or they're automatic? It's just the one the left. So I'm gonna go out the right door. It'll be fine to close up right away.
Well, wait, Paul, you can always go out the doors, it's not a
Right,
problem.
right.
Until I set the alarm, you can always go out the doors.
Right, what I'm saying is that door stays open for a while on the left.
Yes,
You go out the right door, it closes right away.
yes.
Okay.
Because they're not resourced to be able to do, especially in places like.
And then what happens is the administration keep changing back and forth. and some people
Yeah,
don't.
no, I know.
They're not hired for that.
No, I know. I
Well-
understand, like, as an applicant myself, I've been subjected to
I
that
mean,
kind of behavior.
Paul has seen
When I
it,
went
probably
for
some of you as well.
my-
FEMA had a map showing where they were expecting substantial erosion along the shore, and they gave us 2030, 2050, 2100 dates. And that was based on a website they had up. That has been taken down. You can no longer get that information.
Well, that's what we're saying, so to keep tying decisions to FEMA flood maps is increasingly less.
Yes, but unfortunately, our flood zone regulations are tied to.
That's what we were just
Yes,
talking about.
yes.
Yeah,
Is tying it to that, that needs to be part, and we've already talked about this, for
Yeah.
phase two, obviously, it's substantive.
Yes, in fact, one of the discussions I had with my representative in Hartford on flood zone was if FEMA goes away, what happens to our regs? And she indicated that state DEP or DEP
Yeah.
would backstop it, and we would be able to proceed through them.
Yeah.
It may be that we're going to need to use their data set through Circa or whatever else, as opposed to FEMA data set. But right now, we're not there.
I know
So-
right now, I'm not talking
No,
about right now.
absolutely, I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to meet the FEMA regs to get
Insurance.
insurance, but we can be more stringent than FEMA, and we
Yes.
can adopt, so we have to at least meet FEMA,
Yes, that's.
but we
that's
can be
the
more
base, it's
stringent,
not
and
this,
that's
you
where,
know.
and the state is looking at real, I mean, that's why they have, Yukon Circa doing all this work.
So when you say Circa, what is that? Like an
Circa
acronym
is
for?
the
Because I know,
Center for, I don't know.
is that the same as the
for-
SLAM monitor, the sea level rise monitor?
They've done more than that, but it's the Center for
Hang on, I'll get this.
Resiliency and Climate Adaptation. I forgot what the I stands for.
That map you're talking about where they show the sea level rise.
But I know it's Resiliency
Okay,
and Climate
Connecticut
Adaptation.
Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation.
So
Oh, Institute, that's the word I forgot.
on the sea level rise monitor itself, which they show the depictions of the sea level rise by the year 2050, they're saying 30 inches of sea level rise, but
20 inches by 2050, yeah, that's what that
it was 30.
No, I was
Does it
just at a
change?
conference.
So this was a couple of years ago.
20
20 inches.
Okay, so 20 by the year 2050, right?
Yeah.
But on the opening page of that software,
Yeah.
it says this information is not to be used for decision-making process. So I think that's important to comprehend, because a lot of people put a lot of our eggs in the basket to base our judgment off of that sea level rise monitor, when the disclaimer on the sea level rise monitor says do not use this to make decisions
This isn't the, unless you're looking at Circa, they're telling us to use it for decision-making from a municipal.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's why I was trying to figure out if there was a difference between the SLAM and the Circa.
SLAM is not Circa.
And I will say, based on, again, the seminar I was at just last week, the observable phenomenon that they're taking readings from, it seems to be entirely supportive of the previous predictions. So we're, based on what they're seeing around the state and the numbers that they're taking in, the accuracy seems to be fairly high going forward based on what we're going to see. There's certain things that they still are not able to predict, such as rainfall intensity and amounts. They have really got no good evidence about that.
Yeah.
But sea level rise, they're fairly confident that sea level rise is going to be on target with what they're predicting.
Right, and so, though, just to kind of pull that thread a little bit, so that's, sea level rise is one component of flood risk,
Yes.
right? It's not the only one. So the rainfall, precipitation, and some of these other issues that we're talking about also have to be, this is...
Rainfall has nothing, on a coastal property like that, rainfall has nothing to do with the flooding.
You can have flooding on a blue sky day.
Yeah, I'm just
It
saying.
has nothing
exactly.
to do with the tides. That's what I'm saying. So we've got
I didn't say
to...
tides, I said rainfall.
No, I absolutely.
This is an...
If you take the NOAA, Aspen Insurance, they start off by telling you, everybody's in a floodplain.
Yes, exactly.
So you just start off with that.
We have the disadvantage here, obviously, that we have water on two sides.
Two sides.
And we have the rivers coming through.
Yep.
So between, between the fresh water coming one way and the seawater coming the other way, we're kind of squeezed in between.
Well, and I say all this because I think this is going to be an important issue that we are careful in how we approach it. I think because there's going to be a lot of different views on this. We're going to have to, it's going to take into consideration a lot of different equities. And, I think that if I'm going to put a marker on what some of our most complicated issues that we're going to be addressing with outside of Hall Road, it's going to be water.
Yes, the water,
I think it's important to understand that when you're, like the gentleman was talking about adding fill within the flood zone, and I know Denise, you and I kind of touched on this a little bit out of a difference of opinion, where there's no compensatory storage from tidal waters. Like you can't, by filling in a flood zone, if there's a storm surge, the water's infinite. So you can't stop the water from coming. So
But that kind of goes to Jane's point. So
But
maybe we
that's
shouldn't
not
be
the-
building in some of these places anymore. Just because we've done it doesn't mean we should be
Yeah, I mean,
doing
it's
it.
even people have property
It's
rights.
not about...
Exactly. That's why.
It's underwater?
But this is exactly that's why this is going to be a difficult
and that's what.
issue.
It was very difficult. We tried.
Given
The challenge
the-
with the flood in the coastal area isn't about the compensation. That's agreed.
Yeah.
In this area, it's about, are you changing the direction of the water and impacting other people's property?
No, I understand.
Well,
I understand.
and with the change in the CAM requirements, about half a year
That's what I'm
down,
saying. I
but-
think the CAM requirements are...
ultimately, CAM, the state DEP's position on CAM is we should not be encouraging new development in these areas because of the future risks that imposes. So I am sure that when Joe files his CAM application, I send it to the state, I know what the state's going to tell me,
Oh, yeah.
which is, this is a bad idea, don't do this. And I know what Gateway's going to tell me, this is a bad idea, don't do this.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we're already sort of facing those two things going forward.
Yeah.
And the other thing, it's just one of those things. It's really challenging, and I think, as a community, it's one of the things we have to start dealing with.
Yeah.
It's like, there was a point where, with FEMA regs and whatever, where you could just say elevate and we'll take care of it.
Yeah.
But the uncertainty of sea level rise and where we're going with this is, okay, so we know through 2050, but what happens is we don't build houses that only last 5 years, or 10 years, or 30 years, or 40 years, or 50 years.
Yeah,
We have homes
from
from
the 1600s.
Exactly, and it's like, so now building homes in these areas that are not gonna make it, it's like, it's just,
I mean,
Not a good thing.
two points to make, one of which is obviously from today, a 30-year mortgage takes you through 2050.
Yeah.
And as bad as we have it, the predictions across the river in Old Saybrook are by 2100, 19% of the town will be gone.
Yeah, Saybrook's a mess.
So we are in better shape than that. They are predicting essentially
Don't
20%.
invest in Fenwick right now.
Yes,
Yeah.
basically 20% of Old Saybrook is going to be missing come 2100.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's we're better off than that. But that doesn't mean we're in great shape, but we're better off than that. So how you plan for 20% of your town disappearing, I'm not entirely sure. But
For some reason, it's just a
that's
day.
yeah.
It is.
Even if it's 5% for a line, it's
What,
like.
Jane, what did you say?
Well, when I looked at, I've studied up the Saybrook thing pretty
Yeah.
deeply because, I mean, it's a perfect thing of they put their head in the sand all the way.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, we'll just build a berm around
Oh, yeah,
Saybrook.
yeah,
And, but I looked at Old Lyme at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's this little area
Yeah.
of the Black Hall and the
Yeah.
exit of the Black Hall out in, that is our Achilles heel.
It's really hard, and I appreciate the fact that there are property owners there, and so it is this. There's going to be an inherent tension between we have to respect property owners and not do anything that will willfully make their property worthless.
Right.
But at some point, Mother Nature's going to make their property
Pretty
She always
worthless.
wins. She always wins.
And what happens is it impacts us because, okay, so it's not gonna happen now, but in the 20 or 30 years, then we get the major storm, the house blow, all that debris goes in. We're dealing with that. And it's like every time we have a house that goes up, we're
Well,
constantly dealing with
there's
it.
that, but now, like, just to flip it around to the economic development side
Yeah.
of it, what you're also talking about is like, that's a tax base. So we're also willfully removing,
Yeah,
I'm just-
no, not a good argument.
I'm not saying it's an argument that's going to be made.
No, but
It's an
what I'm
argument
saying
that's going to
is,
be
but
made.
what I'm saying is, someone else becomes waterfront property.
Yeah.
This is what happened.
Yeah, but the same thing happens.
Someone else becomes waterfront.
Then wait a little while,
No,
the
because
next
they're
person
saying-
gets
they're
one.
saying these are the high-end homes, and what I'm saying is.
These are the kinds of things we've got to be
I'm just
thinking
saying.
through
I'm the
from
economist.
day one.
How many people have a degree in economics?
I do. I have a master's in it. But anyways, so again, we've got to be thinking this kind of thing through. I respect what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm
I
just
also
saying.
know that we have other people sitting at the table that are going to bring up other issues.
Oh, yeah, no.
But I can-
This becomes very important in phase
Economic
two.
development.
It is, that's right.
Very, very important with land use
Which
and
is
what's
why we've
gonna,
got to get phase one
Yeah,
done so we can get
so
into it.
theoretically, the next thing on the agenda, folks, is reg review. And
well,
it's now-
I'm gonna say, no. I'm gonna say that I would like to postpone that until Monday, because we're gonna reconvene Monday. I'm suggesting we do the minutes, listen to the ZEO report, talk about commissioners' training hours, and call it a night.
I like that idea.
Okay, so then, approval of the minutes, September 8th, 2025, and that was regular meeting, and then the October 1st, 2025 special meeting. Motion to approve, okay. Second, is there any discussion on those two items? Okay, all right, then I'll take a motion to approve. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. ZEO report, violations update.
Not really a lot new to report at this point in time. I will say there is a situation out at 16 Meeting House where the guy entered his property with no permits to do so. It's mostly a wetlands issue, however, the amount of clearing he has done also triggers an erosion control requirement, and he has,
It's a lot.
it's a lot, I mean, you probably,
I saw
okay.
I didn't see it.
it. It's like clear cut.
16 meeting house?
16 Meeting House.
Where is Meeting House?
That's by
Up
Johnny.
Johnny Cake.
Yeah, where the country club is.
Oh,
Where? So you go past the country club and down the hill, or take that left?
You take that left.
You take the sharp left and you go all the way down toward the end on the left-hand side. It's got to be an acre of clearance at this point in time. And where he stopped, the property goes straight down to the water course at the bottom of the hill there. And I had the contractor put in a wood chip berm there before the storm, just to give some level of protection. And he was You know, I had the property owner in here today, and I said, at the very least, you're gonna give me a wetlands permit for this, and we're gonna start, figuring out how to stabilize the site. Again, it also, again, under erosion control regulations, anything more than half an acre of exposed soil needs an erosion control permit. So that's gonna.
Because he has no ground cover.
He has no ground cover, he's cleared it all. And, it's exposed soil at this point in time. So we're gonna try and fold that into his wetlands permit, and if necessary, I will also issue a zoning violation on that. So,
What was he thinking he was doing?
he was thinking that the site's a mess, and now it's not a mess. It was totally overgrown. You couldn't see anything, so now you can see a lot.
I mean, should he be putting mulch down as ground cover until he comes up with a plan?
He should be doing a lot of things, yes, and I've been encouraging him to do a lot of things. He's not the most receptive person, I will say that. The other part of the problem is he's like renting space up here, so we were sending things to Florida, which is a permanent residence. He wasn't getting them. He was the tax bill. Anyway, the bottom line was we tracked him down. I talked to him this morning. I had him in my office this afternoon. I sent him out of here with a wetlands permit application, which he wanted me to fill out for him, which I wouldn't. But again, we're going to start on the wetland side, and then again, if I need to use the zoning camera as well, I'll be issuing a cease and desist order on that as well.
What do you have to cease and desist from wetlands?
At the moment, it's just a notice violation. I did talk with the vice chair of wetlands today, and depending on how fast I get the permit application in, we're going to try and set him up for a hearing at the Wetlands Commission meeting at the end of this month. The problem on the cease and correct is you have to schedule a hearing within 10 days of issuing that order. So I'm trying to wait until we get to the regular meeting window there so that I don't have to have a separate hearing and then the regular meeting. So I'm trying to, again, have everything timed out so that it all happens at once.
Do you know if he had any bad problems after the rain?
I have not been out there since the rain. Honestly, from what I've seen elsewhere in town, not a lot of rain, about an inch or so of rain. So the areas where I would usually see problems, like Button Ball, didn't seem to see a lot of problems. A lot of wind. So I don't expect that there was a huge amount of issues regarding erosion from what happened over the weekend. Because again, what we seem to have gotten was about an inch of rain and a lot of wind, and not, I talked with Dave Roberge this morning for about 20 minutes about what issues there were. He said, Pond Road, the areas where you traditionally see flooding in town, saw flooding in town. But areas that you didn't usually see flooding in town, really didn't
Let me
see
just
it.
correct that. Pond Road, I mean, I'm right there at the corner, and the roads were completely passable. Pond Road, I mean.
We got lucky because of the direction of the wind.
Yes, we did, completely,
I was
because
expecting
it
my whole
was,
property to be under
it was
water.
going,
I slept on the boat.
kind of taking it out. It's like, yeah.
Okay.
But that was completely passable. Yes, little area, but I mean, compared to the past,
Yeah, if the wind was different, that would have been.
the crib was rebuilt, but I mean, even if the wind was coming this way,
I feel like this new crib design is working better.
yeah, I think so.
Because it's an engineered design.
Okay, I
It's a
have
big difference.
inspections to make tomorrow. I will be passing by that on my inspections. I will just go in and take a look and see how it looks based on what happened over the weekend.
It's been dry ever since the last high tide on, what was it, Monday? No, what's today? Tuesday? Sunday night, I think, was the last, no, Monday morning was the last.
highest.
Okay.
Just
Again,
a little.
I wasn't trying to get diverted by pond, but again, more to the point, I will go out to Meeting House tomorrow and take a look and make sure how it looks tomorrow. But that's the only sort of new hot button issue. I don't have anything new to report as far as decisions or anything that's come back since our last meeting at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
And anything else?
I did have a number of members give me training on things that they've gone to. Again, I would remind folks, if you do take training, please get back to me with that so I can put it on my spreadsheet. At the end of the year, I'm obligated to give my spreadsheet back to First Selectman to report to the state. So,
Eric, can I ask, Some of the trainings I do, I'll do a live training so that they
Yeah.
send you a certificate afterwards. But then some, I've watched a video, so
Yeah.
there's no, I don't have any evidence.
Sure.
It's not my word. I can show you my notes that I took because I'm such a nerd.
Honestly,
But I just want to make sure that that's,
that is sufficient.
That's fine. Okay.
This is not supposed to be something where
yeah.
we're not giving college credit for this.
No.
But I mean, ultimately, the standard has been, if I find it as credible,
Yeah.
evidence, then I will report
I'll
it.
send you the certificates I get.
Place
Okay.
like that last year.
And again, if you do watch videos and you believe they have educational value, pass them along
It's
to
on
me.
the clear.
The clear, yeah,
Yeah, those are the ones, yeah.
So just indicate what clear videos you've seen, and we'll just chalk it up on the spreadsheet there.
Cool.
Okay?
And I went to that.
The all day seminar there.
The FOIA that you,
Oh, that's the way, okay.
that, what you
Okay.
sent me about
Okay,
Does fair
I-
housing count?
Huh?
Does a fair housing course count?
yes,
All right, I'll take that
okay,
one.
you send me all your information again, per the requirements of the 4 hours, you've gotta have an hour of FOIA and an hour of affordable housing. So somewhere in there, you gotta make sure you get that, the FOIA and the affordable housing requirement, yes.
So at some point, will you tell us that you got that information
Yes.
that we sent you? Good, okay.
If you send it to me, Mary Jo, I've got it, I will respond tomorrow that, specifically about that.
Okay.
Yes, I got it. You did give me information, I am letting you know, I did receive it, it's on the spreadsheet,
I trust you.
okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay. With that said, does anybody want to talk about anything else or just make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn by Mary Jo. Is there a second?
That was preemptive.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Jane Marsh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much. 6:30 across the street.